This is Algebra 2, Chapter 1, Section 1, in which we will be looking into expressions and formulas. So when we deal with expressions or we deal with formulas, we always have some kind of variable in our way. All we need to know for a variable is it's just a symbol used to represent some amount, some quantity. Typically we use a letter. Sometimes, with trig you'll use Greek letters. We could use something like a box or even a question mark, but typically it's a letter. And anything that has a variable in it, we call an algebraic expression. And one of our main objectives here is going to be evaluating expressions based on values for the variables. To do that, we have to use what's called the order of operations, something you've learned several times. Parentheses and any other grouping symbol. Sometimes they'll use brackets, sometimes they'll use braces. A fraction bar is also a grouping symbol. After parentheses, then you deal with exponents. Then multiply and or divide in order from left to right. Then add and or subtract in order from left to right. Some people remember this with the word PEMDAS, which represents the P, the E, the M, the D, A, S. Some people use a mnemonic like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Whatever trick you use is fine as long as you know the order in which to do things. And it's important that you use this order so that we all end up at the same answer. So let's do a couple of evaluation type problems. So we are evaluating the expression m plus the quantity p minus 1 squared if they tell me that m is 3 and p is negative 4. Now, the first thing we need to do with that is plug in the values for the variables. So in place of the m, I substituted a 3. In place of the p, I substituted negative 4. Now, according to the order of operations, I need to do what's inside those parentheses first. So negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. Now, exponents. Negative 5 squared is 25. There's no multiplication or division, so the next step is the addition. 28. Now, you need to be careful with negative numbers in some of your calculators. If you type in negative 5 squared and your calculator gave you negative 25, you need to remember to put parentheses around a negative number before you do a power to it. And that's a tricky place that people get wrong because they don't have the parentheses on their calculator when they entered the negative 5 squared in this case. If you're having trouble with that, you can ask in class. I'll be more than happy to show you how to set that in so that you can get to the right answers. Let's do another one where we're evaluating expressions. This time we have a value of 12 for m and negative 1 for q. And we have the expression 4 plus m divided by 2q. Well, first off, we're going to substitute in the values. 4 plus 12 divided by 2 times negative 1. There are no grouping symbols to deal with. No exponents, so we'll deal with the multiplication and the division. 2q was one expression, so we needed to clean that up to negative 2. 12 divided by negative 2 is negative 6, and then 4 plus negative 6 is negative 2. A lot of people would make the mistake of trying to add 4 plus 12 and get 16, and then divide. Make sure you do it in the right order. And at this point, I'm going to ask you to pause your video and work this problem. You're using the same values of m and q, 12 and negative 1, in this problem, 2m minus 2 times the quantity 3 minus q squared. Pause your video, work the problem, check your answer. So we did a little substitution work, plugged in the values. 3 minus negative 1 is 4. And I went ahead and cleaned up 2 times 12 is 24. Nothing over here was going to affect this, so I went ahead and cleaned it up. And we get 24 minus 2 times 16. 24 minus 32 is negative 8. The last idea for this video is the idea of a formula. A formula is just another kind of an expression. In this case, it's an equation, where before we just had an expression. We didn't have an equal sign involved in it. Here we have an equation, and it shows relationships among quantities. You've been using formulas for a long time. If I were to ask you how do you find the area of a rectangle, most of you would tell me length times width. That's a formula. A equals L times W. Okay. Typically, you'll use a formula when you know everything except for one value. If I told you the length and the width, you could tell me the area. If I told you the area and the width, you could divide and get the length. So here's an example in which I give you the formula of a cone. Formula for the volume of a cone. Volume is 1/3 times pi r squared times h. So we're going to find the volume of a tornado, because tornadoes are more or less an inverted cone. The height of the tornado is 225 meters, and the radius of it is 75 meters. So we're going to plug in the values that we know. And I went ahead and put 3.14 for pi. If you want to use just the pi button on your calculator, that's fine. You'll get a slightly different answer than I did, but that's okay. Now it's just a matter of cleaning up the arithmetic. 1/3 times 3.14 times 75 squared times 225. And my trusty calculator gives me an answer of 1,324,687.5 cubic meters. Again, you might have a slightly different number down here at the end if you use the whole pi button, but you'll be in the same ballpark. I'll have a little wiggle room in the answer key. So what we've found is we're plugging in values and cleaning them up. There's a fancy mathematical term for that. It's called plug and chug. Plug them in, chug through it. Hopefully, as always, if you had questions along the way, you wrote those down, and we will see you in class.